Hello and good morning. This is TJ Schwartz. I'm here with Lucas Burnley. You're listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. How you doing, Lucas?
Uh, I'm I'm here.
You're here.
Well, I'm a little rough around the edges right now.
Same. And we're gonna be rough around the edges as we talk about some knife making things and manufacturing things, trade show things, probably get into the family life around that and yeah, what we normally talk about, which is just about everything.
Just maybe slightly less
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's dude, I don't want to talk about show prep.
Yeah.
What can we talk about that's related to show prep without directly acknowledging it?
Yeah, we briefly talked about this earlier this week on the phone for some reason, but it's one of the things I've noticed is like inside the industry, there's these pockets, there's these sectors almost of
Mm-hmm.
what you would call spheres of influence. And I've been thinking about it a long time, how there's sort of a blade show bubble. And
Yes.
so shows that fall into the gravitational pull of Blade Show or brands that fall into that pull of Blade Show, they sort of look at Blade Show as like the pinnacle, and you can kind of see a commonality or like a group mentality around that. You know what I mean? Like brands that show up there, like you've got like a Rick Hinder sized brand, they think
Right.
about Blade Show as like the peak event of the year. Whereas if you get
If
at
not peak, like a 100% necessary
yeah,
show, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like the master gathering of
Right.
that group of companies where there's some companies that may go to Blade Show, but for them, it's peripheral. You know what I mean? It's not like they're part of the Blade Show sphere of influence. They just are there sometimes.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think where this thought is going is like a really interesting thought, a topic around brands as it relates to our industry, which is like, it's like the gang idea, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
like you can make knives and not be inside of like what you are talking about is like the blade sphere
hmm
of knives,
Yeah.
right? And I would say that it blade is a really good example, but it probably trickles to like blade is like the culmination of factory and like custom handmade micro brand, kind of everything inside of like one segment of the knife industry.
hmm
Okay, as shows get smaller, that refines, but it also is like, I think that is like a almost like a trickle down effect, right?
hmm
It's relatable. Then you have like home goods shows, shot
Outdoor
show, you have like
retailer.
outdoor retailer, you have like
Yeah.
this whole other level where like there are knife brands that are not inside of the blade show bubble, right? That exist as knife brand. We were actually just talking about one that I think is really cool. And to be completely honest, I don't know that they don't have a booth at Blade. So if they do, like that's just an oversight.
hmm
But as a company that I was not familiar with is this, it's a kitchen knife called New West Knife Works. Recently I saw a set of them at a friend's house. They're super nice. They're like very obviously like small batch made, and they're American made. And I was like, how do I not know about, like, how do you not know about an American knife company? Is like kind of the thought.
Yeah.
It's because they're not inside of that bubble,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Well, it's weird because like you've been in the industry 20 plus years, for me 10
Yeah.
plus years. You almost get this false feeling that you're like, yeah, I know all the American companies.
Yeah,
And then
totally.
you just go wander out somewhere and like you see this random knife store in this small town or something. You're like, I've never what? And it's like you realize that we are in more of a bubble than we think we are. And I'm like, I think that's part
Definitely.
of the conversation is like noticing the fact that we are in a sphere and that there's other regions of the industry as a whole.
Well, and I guess
So,
my question for you would be like, you're developing a production brand, right?
hmm
when you look at that, what do you see? Because I've actually said in the past, I'm like, yeah, we're in a bubble. I've done things to try to like, kind of like push outside of. That's why I love doing apparel and stuff, is like
Hmm.
I feel like it's like a little bit of a push outside of just our
Yeah.
direct industry. Um, EDC is in our industry, but it also pushes outside of a little
Hmm.
bit too. But I realize I'm like, I've worked really, really hard to build a following, to build a brand inside of what essentially is this
Yeah.
bubble, right?
Yeah.
How do you see it?
The way I think about it is the blade bubble feels like the bubble that's about knives because it's not a tactical bubble. It's not a
Right,
culinary bubble. It's not an outdoors bushcraft
right.
bubble. It's
Yeah,
the knife bubble. But
yeah,
I think what I'm learning is the other bubbles are like overlanders,
right,
bushcrafters,
right,
hunters, where they're
right,
not knife collectors per se,
right.
but they're extremely knife oriented
Because the activity
things,
benefits
activities.
from
Yeah.
knives.
So you'll go to
I,
like
yeah,
if you go to like Overland Expo, it's like a knife company that's set up there, or some big hunting expo, a knife company that's set up there that's targeting hunters. Like Montana Knife Company is an example. They don't
right.
go, as far as I know, to Blade Show yet. I don't know if they're gonna be there this year, but it seems like they're an example of like, yeah, everyone in the knife industry knows about them, but they're partying with the hunters. They're not,
Right.
like,
They're not
yeah,
leveraging the knife industry knife buyer to
yeah,
be the avenue for selling their
yeah,
product.
yeah,
They're going after like the
yeah,
hunting, fishing, like I think like industry term is like people say like hook and bullet,
yeah,
right? It's like that would be like the sector.
yeah.
And a lot of that customer base is not, yeah, like you said, not knife specific, but they have the disposable income to be able to afford the product,
Hmm.
and they have a hobby or passion that makes that product valuable.
And another example of this is I've been really thinking about getting into scuba diving,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always wanted to, but there's a shop here in Boise, a couple shops with scuba gear, and I was walking into one just looking around. In that a glass cabinet with a bunch of knives, and they're dive knives.
They're dive nut, dude,
And
and they're different brands.
there's brands in there that I've never heard of. You know what I mean? And
So
it's
I
like,
bet I bet I'm more familiar. It's dude, dive knives are super interesting to me.
mm,
Um, be, I feel like there was a time in custom knives or like knife collecting where dive knives were a bigger thing
mm,
just because they are badass.
yeah,
It's almost like if you say like Rambo knife, you're like, okay, that's like set in time, right? You're like
yeah,
Lyle design, huge combat knife. There was a time period where there were like dive knives that kind of fit into that late 80s,
yeah.
90s,
Like a
dude.
dive knife motif almost.
Like a dive knife as like, yeah, like if you
Yeah,
were if you were almost to like take dive knife DNA and put it into,
like a boot knife.
yeah, that would be like Tekna. Are you familiar
Mm,
with Tekna?
not really,
Okay.
no.
So Tekna. Just look up Tekna dive knives when we get off, and you'll see you're like, they made a dive knife, they made a boot knife. It was the same knife. One had like a sick injection molded locking sheath, one had a leather sheath with a clip.
Hmm.
But like design language wise, they're awesome. But it's like
Hmm.
Coast and like, who did you track any of the names?
Honestly, I don't remember. I kind of had a passing look at the knives because I was
Sure.
there to look at scuba gear, but I need to go back.
I think you do. I think
Yeah.
that, well, that also like brings in like a complete side quest thought, but uh dude, the idea of being involved in product design, manufacturing, development, I think there's a lot of value on an individual level of having hobbies that are kind of like high gear requirement.
Hmm.
When you told me you went to the scuba shop, I was like, yeah, that tracks. That makes like the most
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
of anything. As
Yeah.
I'm like
Except for
messing
the
with
fact that I live in
compound
Idaho.
bows. Yeah. No, no, no. But honestly, it does. Like that's the you have like high Aspen Lakes, right? I would imagine that's like where the diving is happening.
Yeah, well, it I got a kick out of it, dude, because so yes, we do have a lot of Clearwater lakes, a
Okay.
lot of but I was on one of the website pages for like the instructional courses here in Boise. There's two kind of competitors. And on one of them, it was like a FAQ thing, and it's like the number one was like, "Where do you dive in Idaho?" It's like short answer, we don't. And like,
That's great.
and I was like, "Oh, okay." The only problem is the Clearwater lakes in Idaho are cold. So that,
It's not a problem.
yeah,
You can overcome it with more
you
gear.
can. You can. You
Dude.
can.
Uh Tom from Blue Collar, who is now, that business has been rebranded, but he's like a super avid diver.
Nice.
He's like out in the Bahamas a lot.
Mm.
I see like really cool pictures. He's someone you could pull on
Yeah, I should.
for some, you know, inspiration,
Inspiration. Absolutely.
enablement,
Yes.
perhaps.
Yes.
First piece of gear. Oh, I've got some old gear I could hook you up with.
Yeah,
Like,
there we go.
it's always first one's always free.
Yeah. Diving, 100
Okay.
feet
That
deep.
was like a tangent. But I think it tracks. Like I'm I think I would guess for you to also like, because of the type of product that you were making and the fact that you're actually able to produce it in an amount that can satisfy some type of markets that are activity driven are probably really enticing to you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. And that's
Like
that's
you want the LT5 to get used for its purpose. You're not like, oh, I'm psyched to like, yeah, I sold a bunch of knives and this knife goes in someone's safe and is like part of a
yeah.
collection.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thread I'm pulling on is that like I love selling knives to knife collectors because they
Yep.
have a respect for knives that's different than the users in that
Totally.
there's these like aspects of like our MagnaCut knives that it's like a user may not notice, but a collector would, which is, cool. But then at the same time, when you get into those spheres where it's like they're buying knives specifically to use them, to me, I get like a great satisfaction from that. I just got an email from a guy who's up in Kodiak, Alaska, who bought an
Yeah, I read
LT5,
that post. Yeah.
and I was just like, I'm just so happy to hear like that he was using it in the woods, way
Yeah.
up there. And just I get an email like that every once in a while where somebody will say, "Hey, I'm in Mexico. I'm gonna fly to India for my next trip. I'm like traveling around the world."
Yeah.
Like he was asking how I could ship him a knife and it would get to him. Like, should it be in India or should it be in Mexico? Blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
like the thought of my knife going with him on his like journey and
Yeah.
specifically to be used is just an amazing feeling. And I'm starting to think, while still being in love with the Blade Show bubble, starting to think more about like where are the touchstones and where are the people gathering who are
Yeah.
users?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a different frame of mind that I'm starting to try to wrap my head around.
Yeah. I think it's really fun. This kind of tracks with Zach's video that he did on you, which is like, this knife maker does everything backwards.
Yeah.
I would make the argument that a lot of us on like the handmade side started really making knives that were used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I think back, I was primarily like tactically inspired, right? At that point, I was doing a lot of combatives training. I was doing a lot of martial arts. It's what I liked visually from like the knife industry. When I was getting into it, I liked tactical knives. And I had those same emails and like I've got letters from customers. And like I remember when I brought out the first Kwaiken with like the ripcord, right? I got some letters from like police officers and stuff. And like one of them was basically like, hey, like I was in my vehicle and something happened and basically like used the Kwaiken and like stuck it in somebody's forearm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that was the whole point of that. You had the knife appendix carry.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did it. You did the thing and the tool
Mm-hmm.
did the thing. And that is, you're like, oh, that like might have saved someone's life. And that is an amazing, amazing feeling. And then you move forward and forward and forward. The demand becomes higher, the collectability becomes higher, all of those things, and the knives stop getting used as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost backwards. Like
Yeah.
you're doing it with volume, right? But you're already integrated into the knife industry because of your I would say like because of your factory design work.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been really easy for you to just transition into like high-end pieces that like it's mostly being collected, and you
Yeah.
went the other way.
Yeah. And there's something with me that really, really interests me in going the other way,
Yeah.
with going with like looking at what someone is doing with a knife and designing it for that. And then the kicker there is you have to have the volume, the efficiency, and the affordability for it
Yeah.
to be realistic. You know what I mean? Because if it's like collector level prices, there's people that will use them, and collector level like scarcity, people will
Yeah.
still use the knives,
Yeah.
but that's not like the true deep like likelihood of what you're actually doing with all that
Right.
your work. You know what I mean? Like,
Even with the full intent of use, it's
mhm,
like, well, and I would say there are levels. Like
mhm,
you mentioned Rick Hinder earlier.
yeah,
I think his brand is actually a great example of this, which is the product is nice enough that it can be a collection, and it is. And the
yeah,
demand, like you remember like Rick's table getting pushed over at Blade Show,
yeah,
I don't know, decade ago.
yeah,
Like lottery's huge, like the demand is there. And then, but you still see knives that are used
yeah,
completely like scratched up, ground down, like it's used like a tool. And I love that it can exist in both spaces,
yes, I
right?
agree. Yeah, and when I say user, it's like you can go down to where it's like literally like disposable level usability, which
Right,
I don't want to go there, but it's like
right.
going down to where it's like someone who likes to buy things that are going to last them a lifetime, but are also going to use it, where
Yeah.
that price point justifies it in being able to use it and sometimes abuse it, but not so expensive or not so cheap that it's like, disposable. Like, and that's
Well,
like a lifetime tool, but still
a
a tool.
lifetime, dude. It's funny. For a long time, I really struggled, and I do in a way like my when I was making a lot of like combat knives, my ideal was almost like, man, I would love to do this with an injection molded handle and just make it like super durable, like well made, but like inexpensive. And it's like, I couldn't do that at that time. And I didn't have a skill set that would allow it. Now I would be like closer to being able to figuring that out. Right. Are you familiar with mission knives?
Ooh, probably, but I can't remember what the
That
knives
would
look
be
like.
that's like kind of a fun one, maybe as like a walk around, like an Atlanta walk around for you if you get a little chance. Which I think you and I, if we can do it, we should still try to get like a walk. I know you got your booth,
Yeah.
but at some point
Yeah.
we got to do it. We got to do a walking
Yeah,
tour.
we should.
Mission Knives they make like titanium dive knives, right? They use beta titanium. They've been around forever. Um, but that it was like injection molded over like a thick chunk of tie or steel.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved them. I find quality in that, but it's not like it's almost like like the polymer pistol versus like a really nice 1911 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you're like, this feels like it will do the job. It's just not like doesn't it's not refined in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I
It's
think
like it checks all the boxes
checks all
functionally,
the boxes. Yeah,
but there's like an element that's missing when you're not feeling like a wood grip with a steel framed handle, but it's
sure.
like I know exactly what you're saying.
Dude, Mora knife, it hits that for me.
Yeah.
Mora
Yes.
knife is like, dude, they're like $30 and you pick them up and this is just a tool. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like really thoughtfully designed. I ended up when I did that human nature hunting school, I ended up wearing a Mora knife like 90% of the time
Yeah.
past a certain point because I was like, oh man, it's so lightweight. It did everything I needed it to do. It wasn't super precious, but I didn't feel like it's not disposable either.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a really fine balance there. I think right now, dude, like watching you with the LT5, I don't think people have figured out like what that actually is, like from the standpoint of how high of quality in relation to the price. That is it's crazy to me.
Well, I appreciate it, and I do agree with you. I think that knife has yet to. I mean, I agree with you in that the word hasn't really got out yet.
Yeah.
We haven't really. We're not a marketing enterprise over
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
so I'm waiting to see like when some reviewers like pick it up and start to see and use and
Well,
talk
and
about
I'm
it.
curious to see like how it's perceived, because like when you think about what $185 knife is in the market, a like small batch US made product is not the first thing that comes to mind,
Right.
right? Like the Kydex that you're doing on that knife, the quality of the Kydex, if you go to a Kydex maker, that sheath is probably $60. Like what you're doing is actually like a market upset. Dude, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
excited to get one.
Yeah. No, you have one. You just have to come to Blade Show and pick it up.
Oh, even
Yeah.
better. Okay.
Heck yeah.
Okay, we're like tangenting. I'm fine with that, dude. My brain, I'm like smoked
Yeah.
right now.
Same.
I've gone nonstop. I'm on home stretch. Like, oh, I'm starting to talk about blade prep. Uh, what else? Where do we want to go?
Um.
Can we talk about Kihoku for a minute?
Yeah. Let's talk about
Okay.
that.
What do you want to know? Ask me some
So
questions.
you sent me a picture
Yes.
of a tray of knives that look
Yes.
to me like they're ready to go in a box.
They're ready.
They're ready.
Yeah. So run started out with 12 pieces. Okay. I finished 9 of them. And 3 of them had some type of problem, basically. I finished all 12, but basically I got out of those, I got 9 knives that are perfect. There's some like this is a sprint run. There's like some minor variations, like on the jimping, on a couple of them, it's a larger jimping, and then I switch sizes. So like this is an atypical batch.
Yeah.
But that was kind of always the plan, which was like, okay, I'm going to figure out all of the details as I work through this first batch.
To steal a referencing from John Grimsmo, they're the artist proof batch in a way.
Yeah, it's basically an artist proof, right?
Yeah.
Which in the future will get a new logo, which is, I think, kind of fun. I've done it in the past where I used to do a run of knives. Like when I would develop a fixed blade, I would do a run completely by hand just to like make the batch. And those would always be numbered like one of, and that's how, you know, it was like the initial batch.
Yeah.
Right. But there's
idea.
only a few batches that have that. So yeah, man. Kihoku is done. Insane amount of work to fit inside. I looked and it's like, it basically was almost a month start to stop. I'm very glad that I was able to finish the parts that I had and then stop, because what I was seeing was that towards the end, I was still in like problem solving, but I was like, I was making, there are things that I want to go back now and update about the machining process, things that I want to have more tooling for, or like more supplies for. And actually having like a little bit of a break between, I think really is going to let that like settle in and let me make decisions based on what I want versus like what I need to get done.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
But yeah, dude, it feels really good. For me, like the Blade Show bubble, there is something about showing up to Atlanta with a new model that feels like really good and like the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Does that like track?
And that is a hallmark of us being in that Blade Show bubble, I
It's
think,
right.
is that it's like, if you're gonna do some release, some like initial public offering, Blade Show is like the premier place to do it. Yeah. And I agree 100%.
Well, it's, you know, I was like, Maddie, I was like, I know the run's really small. I was like, should I post up a few of these in the group? And she was like, I know why you want to do that. And I know that you want to like take care of people who aren't going to go to a show. She's like, this run of knives, she's like, needs to go to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you can do that. She's like, do that next. She's like, but this run like took so much to get done. She's like, give it to the people that are at the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same thing. It's like, because it's the same. I would say it's the same for collectors, but shifting. But it's essentially, it's like it's the big show, right? You've got people coming in from all over the world. And like the idea that you can get something there that you can't get anywhere else, I think is a real like value add.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's absolutely true.
So yeah, man, I had sent you a message. One of the biggest realizations in the Kihoku process is it is efficient, right? Like it's even in its like R&D like hacked together phase right now, it is efficient. Putting that into my system right now was really tricky because I was like, just the volume of just like parts and like like, okay, I have to like lay out all these parts in a way like, oh, where do I get table space to do that? And like, because
Mm-hmm.
everything I've been working on is like onesie twosie, like prototype or like make a custom, two customs. And I just saw, I'm like, wow, if I doubled or tripled the size of this batch, I'm immediately, my solutions aren't good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. You're coming right into the territory that we found out, which is like you design your shop and you almost forget where do you put the knives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like you don't realize like you think about numbers and you think about the cycle times on machines and what you're going
Yeah.
to need, and then you're like, okay, well, 50 knives on a table.
Right.
It's a big table,
It's a big
you
table.
know.
Well, and actually, I mean, you bring up a point which is really great, dude. I don't think about cycle times.
Mm,
That is not the way that I have used the CNC up until now is very much just like another custom knife making tool.
mhm,
I have never worried about if my feeds and speeds are efficient. I
mhm.
have never worried about like optimizing. It's like I go, I make the things I want to make. Yeah, maybe I'm running a little bit slow. Doesn't matter. I actually got super interested during this project of like refining those things. Like I got the hook got in me a
Mhm.
little bit where I was
Mhm.
like, oh, this is why all the machinist folks are like constantly talking about this,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. And
Because it's actually pretty sticky.
yeah. And it's like if you're doing custom one off and a lot of different random like job
Yeah.
shoppy stuff, and like what a lot of what you've been doing up to now, it's like all of the time is spent programming, designing, setting up, getting the material prepped. And it's like the difference between an 8-minute cycle time and an 18-minute cycle time is like that
You
10
don't even
minutes
know,
is
you don't even notice it. You can
yeah,
do
it's
anything once,
yeah, it's
right? Like
moot.
that's yeah.
Yeah, but if you like, okay, you do this huge process to get everything ready. Now you're ready to hit cycle start like 100 times in a row. 10 minutes times 100.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually that's out
It's a
like
long,
days.
it's
Like,
interesting. One thing I did, I would kind of tell you my cycle times and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's like long. Like you'll be able to get that down. One of them was around scales. I think I was at like 18 minutes or something. And I was like, man, that's amazing. Like I can make like a set of scales in 18 minutes and this is great. Dude, I shaved it in half
hmm
and I was like, but like it felt like magic. And I was like, oh, it's just because I was missing some like missing chip load or like
yeah,
something. I was like,
some wasted
ooh,
movement somewhere. Yeah.
yeah, there was some movement that just didn't need to be
hmm
there. So, um, can I tell you about the name? Did I tell you about the name?
You told me about the name, but definitely
Okay.
share.
All right. So, this knife is based on my Kihon. Kihon was a folder that I did, that was kind of meant to like really, it was in like tactical mindset, EDC, but like really stripped down, super functional, right? Had external like stop pin, like really like tough knife. And Kihon in Japanese is means basics. It's like a kata also, in martial arts. So I designed this fixed blade based on the Kihon, and I kept calling it like the Kihon Field or the KF or like, I was like, man, it doesn't feel right. So the name that I ended up on is Kihoku, which is like combining Kihon with the Japanese word for north, which I think is pretty cool. It's a totally made up word, but I think like as a signifier, it
Mm-hmm.
it really fits like the concept of like a field knife, like
Yeah.
directionality. Like
Well, Kihoku, that's a very Burnley sounding name.
it
If I do
sounds
say so.
Burnley, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it
I
is.
love made up names so much because you're
Well,
not fighting like a word,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, I think made up names are, I have not done a lot. I've done a couple, but like it's getting to the point where it's almost necessary. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then when you start to do it, there's some fun in that for sure.
I think there's some fun. And again, like I was like looking, I'm like, I want like a couple syllables, like I don't know. I don't know how much value there is in a name of a product. The lesson for me was like naming my Quiken folder Quiken was like not probably the best idea because it just is too, it's like naming a big camp knife Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's actually really ubiquitous
Yeah.
and doesn't like separate it.
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah. It's
Kihoku.
naming's a really, I think there's some magic, some swagger in a name
Yeah.
that is weird. It's weird because it's like if it has too much swagger, it's almost like you're trying too hard
Yeah.
too. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like it's almost cringy if it's like too cool.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a
Well, and
weird.
also like I think they apply to the audience. Like there are names that I think give it an appeal to a certain group.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like it's like a naming convention that fits inside of a subcategory,
Yeah, it's
right?
like you might see like the Dragon's Breath Death Saber, and then it's
Right.
like someone else would name that the Shadow, something simpler. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's like you can go all
Yeah.
different
But like
directions.
also if you're like Ren Fair, like
Yeah,
that Dragon's Breath, dude, that's
exa-
sick.
yeah,
Like
exactly, exactly.
that's I do want that. Like
Yeah. Hmm.
LT5, like you're right there. You're like already kind of appealing to like this like simple, maybe like survival minded, military minded,
Yeah.
outdoor minded, where it's like really like, okay, this is gear driven. Here's a
Hmm.
name of this piece of equipment.
Yeah, and the big thing is like with that, it's like a scalable name because it's like
Scare, yeah.
if I don't put a number on it, I'm gonna have to come up with a bunch more names very soon.
Oh
But if I
yeah.
put the number on it, I only need one name, right? So it's like that
I would
that's
like an LT10.
an LT10. There you go.
Yes. Dude, I love big knives so much.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with them, so I need to start to play
Dude,
with that.
they're oh man, it's so satisfying. I bought at Billy Cho's PNWCI show last year. I bought a like an 8-inch or 9-inch knife from Nick Rossi.
Hmm.
Dude, I love it. It's like light and fast. It's a camp knife, kind of Bowie shaped, but like it just
That's
feels good.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, like and they work. Like if you have to do big knife work, you can do like we were when we were dressing out turkeys. We used I like handed this to somebody because they were like using a small knife. I was like, oh, like, and it was fun because like the people in that course were not knife people at all,
Hmm.
and so it was like the look that he gave me was basically like I'm gonna like giving me like the Conan sword, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, but a big knife, like a well designed big knife, can do little knife work.
Yeah.
And he was in there and he was like basically like boning out wings. And I was like, he's like, wow, this works really good. Good job, Nick.
Yeah.
Big knife.
There you go.
Big knife energy.
All right.
LT10.
LT10,
Yeah.
LT14, dude. Might as
Dude.
well. But
Big, you know what? The funny thing about big knives is like the dual category of them, which is like big, thick, heavy chopper, big, light, and then like the balance point in between those. Um, I think we've talked about Adam and Haley DeRozier before, and like
mhm,
Jason Knight. Jason Knight, we talk about a lot. When they make big stuff, you pick it up and you're like, it's deceptively light and fast. And then you'll look and you're like, the spine is 5/16 of an inch thick,
mhm,
but it's like distally tapered. And you're like, you could fully take down a tree with that thing,
yeah,
but it also feels like it like it just wants to eat. Like it's
yeah,
lightweight, and like, but you're like, yeah, it's deceptive.
yeah, yeah. No, there's
Uh recently the thing that came to mind that makes this it's like a good tie-in would be like counterbalances on bows. You're adding weight, but you're making the thing feel more balanced, more stable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or I guess is it a stabilizer? I guess they call them stabilizers.
Stabilize. I don't know. I'm not the right
Dude,
guy.
yet.
Yeah, I tell you
Just
about
wait.
scuba weights. No.
Dude, tell me about scuba. Let's hear it. What did you find out about scuba? Let's I want to hear about it.
So I've been obsessed with scuba since I was in elementary school, and it was probably third grade. There's a sixth grade kid that I always looked up to. He was like the coolest kid in the school to me because his dad was in search and rescue,
Sick.
and he learned to scuba dive in sixth grade, and he brought all of his scuba gear for show and tell one day. And the sixth grade kid, when I'm in like second or third grade, is just pulling out of this duffel bag, like, here's my tank, my mask.
Sick.
And
Yeah.
I remember sitting there like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. You know what I
Basically
mean?
just an
Like,
astronaut.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And it's like a kid doing it because before that, you think about like, oh, yeah, that's for like G.I. Joe and like, Marines and stuff. And then you see this sixth grade kid doing it, and I became obsessed. And between that day and about when I was like maybe 16, I wanted to be like an oceanographer or like some sort of ocean studying, like submersible scuba diving. Like that basically captivated me for like 15 years after that, or 10 years maybe.
hard in Idaho.
And what's that?
Hard in Idaho. You're not going tide
Yeah.
pooling. Like
Yeah,
you're not like
but
you're not
that
fueling the fire.
but that's the ultimate like damp cloth that like doused the flame, was like there's just nowhere to go. And so I basically decided to, well, I didn't decide to, but life happened and I ended up not ever getting certified or anything. And then it just occurred to me, like I just turned 30, like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And I was like, it's time. Like I need to scuba dive. And
Dude,
so I'm
I
gonna go
missed your
get
birthday. Happy birthday.
oh, thanks, man. No worries.
30. Oh,
30,
dude.
the big one, the Whopper.
I 30 was 30 and 40 have been my favorite birthdays.
Mhm.
I I feel like at 30 my life made a lot more sense. And this is weird. I don't know if like everyone has these like feelings on age, but I felt like there was a point in my life where I was just like I was too young to like be living the way that I was almost. And then when I was 30, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This is sick.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You make a good 30-year-old dude.
Oh, well, thanks. And
Okay. So
one,
when are you getting certified?
so I'm thinking August. They have some
Yeah.
openings. It's like kind of the last chance because you have to do open water swimming, diving to like get certified. And in Idaho, like, better get it done in August
Better get
or
it done.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say like it should be like your active recovery from Atlanta,
yeah,
but that's perfect because it's like you come back from Atlanta, you get back into the swing, you work two
yeah,
months, you do that, then you have 2 months until Blade West.
yep,
So it's
yep,
like splitting because then
yeah.
it's like active recovery, but also like pre-coping for the
Yep.
next show prep.
One also funny aspect to that is after that kid brought the scuba gear in, I think I asked my parents for scuba gear for Christmas for like 4 or 5 straight years. And I just thought like they can just go to the store and they can just
Yeah.
buy me some scuba gear and put it under the tree and I just go scuba diving. And yeah, and then I'd be on eBay. That was like the beginning of eBay, you know what I mean? When it was like Wild West eBay, and I was like on there trying to find like Google, like search scuba gear, filter it to like cheapest first, and be
Yeah.
like, there it is, $80. Like that's all, you know.
Like
And
done.
yeah, I had like books and stuff, but yeah, I almost forgot. Like it was like when I turned 30, it was almost like I remembered. I was like, I forgot about that a little bit.
Dude, that's it's actually pretty nice. I've always been really bad about doing like weird things around time where I'm like, oh, I missed that, or like I'm gonna stop doing this because I'm like too old. And
Mhm.
I've gotten better about just being like, oh, nope, I'm starting this now
Mhm.
because if I start it now, I'll get X amount of years to like do this thing.
Yeah.
And also having kids really, I think, helps that thought process. How are you? How old are how old are your kids now?
2 and 4.
Nope. 2 and 4. Okay. So four, yeah, four is like where it started with Bo, where like you start to do like some different like side by side stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know, like I was gonna ask, like, how are you with like gear for your kids and like activities for your kids and stuff? But I don't know that you would fully know yet.
Yeah, yeah, it's very early, but this summer with Delta is definitely where we're starting to see her get excited about a lot of things. We got
What
a
is
big
Delta into?
she is kind of into everything, honestly. She's just excited in general. She's in T-ball right now. She's kind of into that. I think she likes it, but just because it's different, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
going to be very sticky, but she really likes. We got a big tandem kayak, like big, like
Oh, nice.
close, like bordering up on canoe size, so that all four of us can go in there, and she, she loved that. So it's been kind of chilly, honestly. Even this far late into the spring, it's usually
Yeah.
warmer, but so we need to get that out more.
It's fun, man. I don't know. Winston right now, he's not like he's like fully engaged in Legos. Dude, this is from a design standpoint, it's really weird. So Bo loves Legos, but
Mhm.
it was like superhero Legos to start. Okay. And then it went into Harry Potter Legos.
Yeah.
Okay. Winston likes Ninjago Legos, but Bo never got into Ninjago. And I'm like, it's a couple year difference.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it's just interesting the way that like the trends work. Now Bo is like, because of school, Bo is like super interested in Minecraft.
Mhm.
And he's 7, like he hasn't played video games at all. Like he hasn't, hasn't done that. And he's like, I want to play Minecraft. And I'm like, okay, like we can look at that. I don't know. It's just interesting the way that like the hobbies and flows. Bo and I are still doing, we're doing archery twice a week. And that one has been like, that's like the first one where I'm like buying him gear and thinking about his gear. And what I'm noticing is like I'm basically just buying him stuff that I would want for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, a little
So
vicariousness.
I will probably be a gear dad where I'm like, his bow is pretty sick. Like
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah.
his case is sick. And I'm like, I'm gonna figure out how to build him a little like, stabilizer for it. And I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
that's cool. Like I can do like a knurled aluminum stabilizer and like just like, I don't know. It's fun
Yes.
dad stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for that. Yeah, we're just kind of on the horizon now of that life, you know what I mean? Wilson obviously trails behind.
Yeah, for
He's
now.
just he digs in the mud and throws things. So,
It's good,
yeah.
man. To Winston just turned 4, and I'm like,
Mm,
oh yeah, you're like big. You're like I've been boxing with him,
yeah.
and that like we box before bedtime, and I just
Mhm.
do like I basically just do boxing drills where just I let them hit my hands,
Yeah.
dude, and they love it so much.
Yeah.
And just
Good
like
idea.
little like I'm just like we just hang out and do combos, and I'm
Wear him out
like,
a little bit.
yeah, wear them out. They feel good because they got like this is all this like energy, and I'm like, and I feel like a lot of times it's like toning kids like, hey, like chill, like, okay, that's not like where we're at right now. And sometimes then it's just like, especially like that before bed, you're like, no, they're gonna get wound up. And it's like, no, it like at least with our kids, like it regulates them.
Yeah.
They'll do that for 5 minutes, they're psyched, and then they're ready for bed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just like expel that last little bit of energy and then they just crash.
Yeah.
Definitely works. Yeah, the kids they like chasing me. So
Yeah.
if I we have like laminate floors through the whole house. So if I wear socks, it's very hard to run in the house, you know? And if they're barefoot, they can like almost catch me because they can go around
Little
corners.
sticky little feet.
Yeah.
You say
And
you
so
need some
it's
hospital socks.
yeah, so it's actually like a legit effort to like run away from them.
That's
So
pretty fun. It's
yeah.
good stabilizer muscles.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you wrestle with them?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like doing they try to keep me down. So I'll start on the ground and I'm like, okay, your job is to like not let me get up. And then we'll do the other one. Like, okay, you just have to pull me down to the ground.
Mhm.
And it's like just interesting to see like where like their balance and like weight changes are and like they
Yeah.
figure out like teaming up and stuff. Like it's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I know you got people coming into town, right? So you're on a short
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, my
I'll
parents are
wrap it.
rolling through. Yeah, we should probably wrap it up, but that was a really great conversation, man.
Dude, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice little break. Next time talk, it will be post Atlanta. I'm sure we will have takeaways and thoughts. Yeah, guys, thanks for
Yeah.
listening. Thanks for your support on Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. And if
Yep.
you are going to be at Blade Show, this episode should drop the Monday before Blade. So if you hear this,
Yep.
come look us up.
Yep. I will be at a table. I will be at Tom Krine's table on Saturday. I'm basically doing a pop-up. TJ has his own booth. Would love to meet some of you guys. Just like come up and say hi, please. So yeah,
I
cool.
love it.
All right, man. Safe travels
Peace.
and good luck with the rest of the work.